الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. To proceed. Today, بإذن الله تعالى, as it's our first lesson after a period, what we want to do is summarize the fundamentals of Arabic grammar in 60 minutes, in an hour. That, inshallah ta'ala, is our objective. So, to begin therefore, in 60 minutes, the fundamentals of Arabic grammar, and we are going to begin with the three types of word in Arabic grammar. So the entirety of Arabic grammar, we know, can be divided into three parts. The first of them is ismun. Ismun. And an ismun, it refers to, in English, a noun. So it's a naming word. The second is fi'lun. Fi'lun, which refers to, in English, a verb, a doing word, an action. The third, therefore, is harfun. Harfun. Hasanan. That's not quite a fatha there, so let's change that to a fatha. So, a harfun, literally in English, it refers to a letter. But in Arabic, there's two types of harfun which we're going to explain in greater detail, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Therefore, every word that we encounter in Arabic is going to be one of three types. Either it's going to be an ismun, a noun, or a fi'lun, a verb, or because identifying a harfun generally is more difficult, we use a process of elimination. Meaning, if the word is not an ismun or a fi'lun, then it must be a harfun. But principally because identifying an ismun and a fi'lun is far easier. Therefore, the first type, an ismun, we said it refers to, in English, a noun, a naming word, such as kitab. So if we write kitab on the board, we have an example of an ismun. However, the first point to note with regards to an ismun, or in plural al-asma'u, is that there must be an ending. In fact, the essence of Arabic grammar, if you truly want to master it, is to recognize that every ismun has an ending, and it can be one of three types, and there will be a reason for it. So we know therefore that the first and the default state of an ismun is where it ends with tanweenu dammin. Tanweenu dammin means that we place two dhammas or dhammatani on the last letter. So we have kitabun, and that's very important because, as I said, every ismun in Arabic must have an ending, and that ending is an indicator of what type of word or the role that that word plays in the sentence. And the default state is tanweenu dammin, and that state is called raf'un. Raf'un. And the beauty of Arabic grammar is that the names that we use in order to identify the different aspects of grammar, they themselves indicate the role or the meaning of that particular term, which here is raf'un. What does raf'un literally mean? It means raised. So we know therefore that the Dhammah is raised above the letter. That's the first state, and as I said, it is a default state in Arabic grammar. The second state is where it ends with tanweenu fathin. And tanweenu fathin is where we place two fathas or fathatani on the end of the word. So we read it kitaban. That state is called nasbun, meaning in Arabic fixed. So it's as though the mark is fixed above the letter. Now the point to note is that this is not the default state. The very fact that we have changed it from raf'un, from tanweenu dammin to nasbun, indicates that something has acted upon that word. Something has caused to change it. And that we will discuss bi'idhnillahi ta'ala shortly. That's the second state, nasbun. So the third possible instance of an ending on an ismun is where it ends with tanweenu kasrin, where we have two kasras or kasratani, and that is called jarrun. Jarrun literally means dragged. So it's as though we've dragged the vowel from the top to the bottom. And again, that is not the default state, because the default state is raf'un, which indicates that something has acted upon the word. Now I should have mentioned that when I say something has acted upon the word, I haven't written another word before it which would justify that alteration, but I just mentioned it for the purpose of clarification, and we're going to explain the scenarios where it does become jarrun, when something is acted upon it, during the course of this lesson. Therefore, one of the founding principles of an ismun is to recognize that it can be in any one of three states. And for the majority of al-asma'u nouns, it will have two vowel markings at the end. Not all of them, there are always exceptions, but for the majority. And that word, in each instance, kitabun, kitaban, and kitaban, means a book. However, as I mentioned, the ending is indicative of the fact that its role in that sentence has changed, but nevertheless the meaning is still a book. And that's how in Arabic we identify the indefinite noun. So in Arabic it's called an-nakirah, which means the one which is unknown, or the thing that is not known. And we recognize it by the two vowel markings, or the tanweenun on the end. So therefore, if now, let's take this back to being in its default state, which is a correct state, which is raf'un, that if kitabun means a book, then how do we represent the definite article in Arabic? So that's indefinite, it's a nakiratu. How do we represent in Arabic al-ma'rifatu, or that which is known? Quite simply by adding alif and lam. Now, some of the grammarians refer to that as alif and a lam, and some of them refer to it as lam ta'rif, or the lam that makes something known, recognized. Either way, the point is that by adding al to an ismun, it alters its type from one which is indefinite to definite. Now, because the tanweenu dammin here represents an indefinite state, or rather the tanweenun represents an indefinite state, then it can't be applied to the same word that is preceded by al. So we have to therefore drop one of the dhammas. And we read it al-kitabu, so it's therefore changed from a book to the book. Right, so we've mentioned therefore the three states, raf'un, nasbun and jarrun. The default state is raf'un. Both kitabun and al-kitabu are still in the raf'un state. Note that the addition of al does not affect the state. That is still raf'un. Similarly, if we were to remove the dhamma and place a fatha, that is still al-kitaba, meaning the book. And similarly, if we remove the fatha and we place a kasra, that still reads the book al-kitabi, but it's in a different state. But the point to note is that al has not changed, whether it's raf'un, nasbun or jarrun. The next point we want to mention is that unlike in English, and apologies that I keep making reference to English for those of you whose first language is not English, but one of the distinctions in Arabic from English is that we have two genders in Arabic. We have the male gender, al-mudhakkaru, and we have the female gender, al-mu'annathu. And every ismun will either be al-mudhakkaru, male, or it will be al-mu'annathu. And the question which is frequently asked is, how do we know whether an ismun is al-mudhakkaru, male, or al-mu'annathu, female? And the way that I would explain it is that recognize the ones that are female first, because they can usually be clearly identified, and then the remainder are all male. And the vast majority of al-asma'u, nouns in Arabic, are male. So how therefore do we recognize that a particular ismun is female? We do so with one of two ways. The first is the ending of the word. For example, the word for a tree is shajaratun. Shajaratun. That is a word for a tree. Note that I've written it with tanweenu dammin because it's in its default state. Shajaratun, which means a tree, has a particular ending, ta marbutah. That is called ta'u marbutah. The ta which is connected to the letters that precede it, and that is indicative or representative of a female word. So therefore any word, any ismun that ends with a ta marbuta, such as ma'idatun, a table laden with food, sayyaratun, a car, nafidhatun, a window, any word that ends with ta marbuta will be a female word. The other type of word is the one that has a female meaning, such as ummun. Ummun, that's not a great shadda, so let's rewrite it. Ummun, which means a mother. Because a mother is inherently representative of a female meaning, we therefore say that ummun is female, but there's no ta'u marbuta at the end. Similarly, bintun is also a female word. Now, there is another category of word which is also female, but you would not necessarily know that, such as, for example, darun. What does darun mean? Well, it's the same meaning of baytun, which means a house. But where baytun is male, darun is female. Now, we're not going to mention lots of examples because this is intended to be a summary. But the point to note, therefore, is that female al-asma'u nouns will be identified either because of the ta marbuta, and that's the clearest and most common indicator, or by the fact that they have a female meaning, or there's a third category, such as darun, and interestingly bi'run, well, a well. They are also female words, but they are few in relation to the word that ends with ta marbuta. Now, the remainder are all therefore al-mudhakkaru, are all male. And that's the easiest method of recognizing whether the word is male or female. Recognize or identify whether there is an indicator. If there is, it is female. If there is not, then it will be a male word. Point we need to speak about with regards to an ismun is the three different versions or numbers with regards to the ismun. In English, we have the singular, such as a book, and we have the plural, such as books. In Arabic, we have the singular, such as book, kitabun, and we have the plural, kutubun. But we also have what we call al-muthanna, the dual. So we have three types. We have al-mufradu, al-mufradu, which is the singular. We have al-muthanna, muthanna. Let me just correct that. Al-muthanna, the dual, and we have the plural, which is al-jam'u. Al-mufradu, such as kitabun, al-muthanna, such as al-kitabani, and al-jam'u, such as kutubun, and we're going to explain each one of these in greater detail. The next point to note is the different types of plurals in Arabic, and there are three types. The first type is called jam'u, which means plural. Al-mudhakkaru, actually that's al-mudhakkari, which is the male. And then we have as-salimu, jam'u al-mudhakkari as-salimu. What does jam'u al-mudhakkar as-salimu mean? The sound male plural. So we know that jam'u is plural, al-mudhakkar is male, and the salim is the sound, and we're going to explain what that means in a moment. The opposite, therefore, is jam'u al-mu'annathu. That is al-mu'annathu. In fact, that's an idafa there. Let me just tidy that up. Jam'u al-mu'annathi as-salimu. So, where we have a sound or the sound male plural, we also have the sound female plural. So what remains therefore is jam'u taqsir. Jam'u at-taqsir. And what does that mean? It means at-taqsir is the broken. At-taq, let's say sakoon on there. At-taqsiri. Three types: the sound male plural, the sound female plural, and the broken plural. So what do we mean by the sound male plural? And this is the easy one that I'm sure that you've all encountered before. If we start with al-mufradu, Muslimun. If we start with Muslimun, then we have the singular, al-mufradu. This is the singular, al-mufradu. Now, in order to turn a singular noun into a plural, which is sound and male, then we add a waw and a noon. So it becomes muslimuna. Muslimuna. That now is the sound male plural. So we've moved from muslimun to muslimuna. We've moved from al-mufradu, the singular, to al-jam'u, the plural. Now, you may be wondering, well, how do we represent the three states, raf'un, nasbun, and jarrun, when we have the sound male plural? Because this always ends with a fatha. We do so by the presence of the waw. The waw itself is indicative or representative of the raf'un state. So we say that that is raf'un. How do we represent the nasbun state? We add a ya to it. So it becomes muslimina. That ya is representative of the nasbun state. Similarly, if the third state, which is jarrun, that too is muslimina. Muslimina. So that too represents, or the ya is representative of the jarrun state. So what we note therefore is that whereas the waw represents a raf'un state, the ya in both muslimina and muslimina here, both of them represent the nasbun and the jarrun state. So al-ya'u here has a dual role, and sometimes that can be confusing, but once your understanding of grammar improves, then inshallah ta'ala you'll be able to differentiate between them. That therefore is jam'u al-mudhakkari as-salimu. We move therefore to jam'u al-mu'annathi as-salim. We move to the female sound plural. So we're going to leave these three here because we want to need them, but the al-mufradu, the singular, how do we change muslimun, which means a male Muslim, to a female Muslim? We do so by the ta marbuta. So we say muslimatun. That's al-mufradu, the singular, but we're talking about the plural. So how do we go from the singular to the plural? We do so by adding an alif and a ta. So we remove the ta marbuta, we add an alif and a ta, and it becomes muslimatun. Muslimatun. That is the plural of muslimatun, meaning female Muslims. And that is a raf'un state. And in this instance, we do have our tanweenu dammin, which is what we're familiar with. Now, in the nasbun state, again, we say that the plural is made by the alif and the ta, but in this instance, it's tanweenu kasrin. And you may be slightly confused because tanweenu kasrin, or the kasra, is indicative of the jarrun state, but when it is the sound female plural, then we say that the kasra, it deputizes for al-fatha. it deputizes for al-fatha. So you can never say for the sound female plural in the nasbun state, you can never say muslimatan. That cannot occur. Therefore, what we have here is muslimatin. The other point here with regards to the jarrun state is that again we add the art musli, should have removed that. That should be muslimatin and that should be muslima. Now the question is, how do we represent the jarrun state in the sound female plural? We do so by the, again we use the same tanweenu kasrin. So that's more like our normal jarrun state for al-mufrad, in that we are using tanweenu kasrin. So we have muslimatun in the raf'un state, muslimatin in the nasbun state, and muslimatin in the jarrun state. Is jam'u al-mu'annathi as-salim. Remains therefore is jam'u at-taksir. Jam'u at-taksir. So if we return back to our word kitabun. Kitabun. How do you represent the plural? And why is it called at-taksir, the broken? The reason being is because whereas the two sound plurals, both male and female, we added to them and the original al-mufradu stayed the same, with jam'u taksir you take the original al-mufrad, the word in the singular, you break it and you reform it. So kitabun, which means a book, becomes kutubun. 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 So we've taken the word, we've broken it, and we have formed a new word. The word for a pen, qalamun, is taken, qalamun, we break it, aqla, and we add to it, and we form the word aqlamun. The word for a wall is jidarun. We take it, we break it, we either add to it or remove, and we form a new word, judurun, babun, abwabun, and so on and so forth. And in reality, there are several patterns that we follow in order to create the new plural. And that's a question which is asked frequently too. Well, how do we know what the plural of a particular word is? Well, you know when you learn what it is. So just as kitabun is altered to kutubun to form the plural, then similarly you learn the other plurals too. And it's also important to note that the broken plural that alters with regards to the three states in the same way, generally speaking, as the singular. So we have kutubun raf'un, and we have kutuban in the nasbun state, and kutubin in the jarrun state. And that therefore is the broken plural. Spoken about al-mufradu, kitabun, and we've spoken about al-jam'u and the three different types, the plural. So what remains therefore is al-muthanna, the dual. And we usually mention that at the end because, as I explained earlier, in English we don't have the dual. So it's slightly more unusual for the learner who's coming from an English speaking background. Therefore, the al-mufradu, the singular, we know of the word a book is kitab. And of course we have to have the ending kitabun. How do we form the dual from al-mufradu? So how do we form al-muthanna from al-mufradu? Quite simply, we add alif and a noon, and it becomes kitabani. Kitabani. That is how we form the dual in Arabic, kitabani. Now, note that this alif and a noon with a kasrah, that is fixed in that state. So it's always a kitabani. So the next logical question, well, how do we represent the three states, raf'un, nasbun, and jar? Well, the presence of the alif, again, is indicative of it being raf'un. And similar to the sound male plural, if we want to form the dual in the nasbun and the jarun state, it becomes ki ta bayni, kitabaini. That becomes the nasbun. Not a very good bar. Let me do that again. Nasbun. So we say therefore that the ya here, this letter, that is what represents the nasbun state. Thereafter we have the final one, which is the jarun state, and again it is the same as kitabaini as the second one, and that is the jarun state. So the ya again represents the jarun state. It can be slightly confusing when you compare al-muthanna to the sound male plural, because they can sometimes look the same, particularly if you remove the harakat or the vowel markings. But again, you will recognize whether or not it's the plural or the dual based upon the context and also the role of that word in the sentence, which will become clear the more that you read and understand and are able to break down sentences from a grammatical point of view. That therefore is al-muthanna. Therefore, because we've spent quite a lot or longer than I expected upon the ismun, moving on to the fi'lun. The fi'lun, as we mentioned earlier, means a verb, a doing word, an action. And in Arabic, there are two types of tense with regards to a fi'lun. Either there is al-Mahdi, which represents the past tense, or there is al-Mudari'u, which represents the present tense. The third tense, which is generally introduced at this point, is al-mustaqbalu. Al-mustaqbalu represents the future. But in reality, it's not a separate tense, because we use al-mudari'u but add to it to represent al-mustaqbalu. So if we just draw a dotted line here to indicate that there is a difference, we'll write it and then explain staqbalu. Right, so we have al-madi, al-mudari'u and al-mustaqbalu. Now, al-madi represents the past tense. So we have, for example, the verb kataba. Kataba. كتب represents the meaning he wrote. That's literally what it means. In dictionaries, it's usually introduced as to write, but actually it means he wrote. And in order to change the conjugation, in order to represent she wrote or I wrote, then we have to we add to the ending. I was going to say we add to the beginning or the ending, but that's al-mudari. So for example, kataba, she wrote, becomes katabat. And what's interesting about the al-Mahdi is that it always changes in the same way, meaning that the way the verb is, regardless of which verb it is, so akala, shariba, and so on and so forth, the way that the conjugations are formed is the same, which is why it's always easier to begin with al-Mahdi. So kataba, we know he wrote, katabat, she wrote. I wrote becomes katabtu, that's I. So just write he, she, I. You, single male, is katabta. Katabta. You, single male. You, single female, is katabti. Single female. We wrote. We're not going to do all the conjugations, just the most common ones. Katabna is we wrote. So those are the singular. Kataba, he wrote. Katabat, she wrote. Katabtu, I wrote. Katabta, you wrote, single male. Katabti, you wrote, single female. And katabna, we wrote, which of course isn't singular, plural, but it's very easy, inshallah, to remember. Now note, the important point to remember here is that, as I said, it's the al-Mahdi is quite simple because it changes in the same way, regardless of which verb you have. If that now is al-Mahdi, al-Mudari'u is slightly different. Why? Because the harakat, it does change on the middle letter depending upon what type of verb it is. But don't concern yourself with that at the moment. I'll just mention one or two examples to illustrate. So, yaktubu. Yaktubu. That is the present tense al-Mudari'u of kataba. So if kataba means he wrote, i.e. in the past, an action which is now complete, yaktubu is the present, he is doing it now. She wrote is taktubu, so the beginning here changes. Taktubu, she is writing. I am writing is aktubu. Aktubu. You, single male, are writing is taktubu. You, single female, are writing is taktubina. Taktubina. Note here is that we've added both to the beginning and the ending, which is why al-Mudari was slightly more difficult. That's one of the reasons. And katabna is naktubu. Naktubu. Naktubu, we are writing. So we've gone from kataba in the past to yaktubu in the present, and we've added to the beginning either a ya, a ta, an alif, or a noon. So there are 4 possible letters that we can add to the beginning that will represent a different conjugation, and of course also to the end. And similarly, they are writing is yaktubuna if it's male and yaktubna if it's female, but as I said, we're not going to discuss all of them. That is al-mudari'u. One of the differences between al-mudari'u and al-madi is that we can add to the beginning and the end, whereas al-madi only adds to the end. The other difference is, as I said, the middle letter. Here it's a dhamma, but it can also be a fatha and it can also be a kasra. For example, yashrabu. Yashrabu. Here, note that the middle letter is a fatha, not a dhamma. Similarly, which yashrabu means he is drinking. And we can also say yajlisu. Yajlisu means he is sitting, but note that the middle letter now has a kasra. And that's a question which is frequently asked. Well, how do we know when we have an example of al-madi and we want to change it to the present tense, al-mudari'u, how do we know whether that middle letter is going to be a dhamma, a fatha and a kasra? And the answer is, you have to learn. Everybody has to learn to understand what that harakatun, that vowel will be. Even Arabs make this mistake. But you shouldn't be overly concerned about that, because once you hear it being spoken correctly or you read it and it's vowelized correctly, then you will learn what it is. That therefore is al-mudari'u. The third state that a verb can be in, or rather we shouldn't say state, but the third tense, al-mustaqbalu, and we said that that's not really a distinct tense. Why? Because we take al-mudari'u and we add to it. And we add to it either with a scene, so we say sa-yaktubu, or a sawfa. So what does seen and sawfa? The distinction between them, and they both represent the future, is that seen is what we say in Arabic al-mustaqbalu al-qareeb, a future which is close, whereas sawfa is a future which is distant. So if we're going to say sayaktubu, it means he will write. If we're going to say sawfa yaktubu, it means he will write at some point in the future, but it's more distant than sayaktubu with a single scene. There's nothing more complicated than that, and that's how you differentiate between them. If you want to express that something will be done in the distant future, then you will use sawfa, and if you want to express that something will be done in the close future, then you would use seen. The next point to note with regards to the fi'l on the verb is how to negate it. How do we negate it? We negate it by the presence of, when it's al-madi, we negate it by the presence of ma. If it's al-mudari'u, we negate it with the presence of ma or la. And in addition to that, we can also have lam and lan. So there are 4 possible ways. Ma and la are the same. Lam and lan are slightly different. And we're going to explain those. So, quite simply, kataba means he wrote. If we want to negate it and say he did not write, then we simply add ma. Ma kataba, he did not write. Ma katabat, she did not write. Ma katabtu, I did not write. ما كتبت, you single male didn't write. ما كتبتي, you single female didn't write. And ما كتبنا, we didn't write. Quite simply, it's like that. With regards to the present tense, we can negate it with a ma, so we can say ما يكتب. He is not writing. He is not writing, I know. We can say لا يكتب. لا يكتب, which means he is not writing. So those two are the same, ma and na. However, with regards to lam and lan, lam and lan, with regards to those two, if we add lam to a verb in the present tense, then it changes it from the present to the past meaning with a negation. So we say lam yaktub, and something else happens, and that becomes a jazmun or a sukoon. Lam yaktub. So lam yaktub means he did not write. So it's similar in meaning to ma kataba. Lam yaktub is similar to ma kataba. And we can apply it to all of the others. And they would all become a sukoon, except for taktubina, where you would drop the noon and it would become lam taktubi. And there's a special rule for that, because it's from the five al-af'al wal-khamsa, the five verbs which you drop the noon to represent the jazmun state. And that's what it's called. It's called the jazmun state, lam taktu bi. But the others, that would become lam taktub, lam aktub, lam taktub, and lam naktub. That is a lam. As we said, it changes the meaning from the present to the past, and it negates it. So it's similar to ma kataba. So what therefore of lan? If we apply lan to she is writing, then it has the meaning of she will not write, i.e. in the future. So the dhamma becomes a fatha, and it becomes in the nasbun state. So what we will have gathered therefore is that al-mudari'u, the endings do change, as opposed to the al-Mahdi, which is considered to be fixed. That's fixed on a fatha, that's fixed on a sukoon, fixed on a dhamma, and so on and so forth. Whereas with al-Mudari'u, the ending actually can change depending upon what's acting upon it. That's why it's called al-Mudari'u. Al-Mudari'u means resembling. And what does it resemble? It resembles an ismun. That is what it resembles. Therefore, lan is for the future. Lan taktuba, she will not write. Lan aktuba, I will not write. And in all of these instances, by applying it, we have the nasbun state. We have the raf'un state left alone, naktubu. We have the jazmun state when preceded by lam. So we have three possible states on al-mudari'u. Third and the final type of word in Arabic is a harfun. Harfun literally in English means a letter. In Arabic we have two types of letters. We have what we say haruful mabani and haruful mani. Haruful mabani are those letters which we use to form words, such as if we want to form the word kitabun, we have al-kafu, al-alifu, al-ba'u, and collectively they form kitabun. That's commonly how we use it in English. But harfun also refers to a different type of word. Haruful ma'ani. the haruf that represent words. And the most common type of haruf in Arabic, or particularly for the learner, is what we call haruf al-jarri. Haruf al-jarri. Haruf al-jarri is the letters of dragging, meaning we're going to drag them down, or we're going to drag the word down because of these particular haruf. And the common ones, for example, are fi, which means on, or rather in, ala, on, min, from, ila, to, and there are a number of others too, hatta, and so on and so forth. So when we have a harfun from huruf al-jarri, such as fi, and we place it before an isman, such as kitabun, we affect that particular isman. So if we place fi before kitabun, then we have to change the ending, because we've changed the state because of the presence of fi, and we go from kitabun to kitabin, fi kitabin. Now that's important. Why? Because this is the first instance of where we've seen what we call an amilun, an agent or an actor, which has acted upon another word to change it. That's the first example we've seen of an ismun. We saw examples of it in the fi'lun with the lam and lan, but now we've seen it in an ismun. In Arabic grammar, this is called al-jaru wal-majrur, or harfu jar ism, or ismun majrur. So there's two types of description that we can apply to it, which will be explained in the other lessons. But the point to note here is that we've gone from kitabun to kitabin, which now means in a book. And if we want to say in the book, it would be fi al-kitabi, it would be the same. Similarly, ala kitabin, on a book, min kitabin, from a book, ila kitabin, which would mean to a book, and hatta kitabin, which means also a book. So these haruf al-jarri, when applied to an ismun, make that ismun majrurun, in the state of jarrun. It's been dragged down. The tanween al-dammin has been dragged down. Now these haruf al-jarri are the most common instances of harfun, particularly for the learner. However, they're not the only ones. We also have other types of harufun. So we've already seen, for example, what we call harufu nasbin. Harufu an-nasbi. An-nas, let's write that correctly. Harufun nasbi. Right. So harufun nasbi, the haruf that render a fi'lun mansubun. And what have we already seen? We've seen lan, haven't we? When it's applied to a present tense verb. Aktubu, I'm writing. Lan aktuba, I will not write. And similarly, we have others such as an, and we have idhan, and so on and so forth. And K, we're not going to mention them all, but the point to note is that there are other types of harufan other than حروف الجر. The other ones that we've already discussed are حروف, or we've seen examples of, الجزم, جزمي, حروف الجزم. And what did we see already? We've seen lam when applied to الفعل المضارع. أكتب, لم أكتب. أكتب, I'm writing. لم أكتب, I did not write. Similarly, we have حروف الشرط. حروف الشرط. What's حروف الشرط? حروف of conditions. So if you're going to introduce a conditional sentence, such as with in and lo and إذا. In, lo and إذا, all of them represent the حروف الشرط, letters that introduce a conditional sentence. And in reality, there are other types of حروف, which we're not going to discuss in this summary because that's what it's intended to be. But the point to note is that there are others in addition to حروف الجر. A few minutes that we have left. The other two aspects from the fundamentals of Arabic grammar that I want to introduce is the two types of sentences in Arabic. The first is called al-jumlatu, al-ismiyatu, which is the nominal sentence, or the sentence comprising of or beginning with a noun. And the second is called al-jumlatu al-fi'liyatu. And that's the sentence, the verbal sentence, or the sentence that begins with a verb. So all of Arabic grammar, if it is a sentence, then it will either be al-jumlatul ismiyya or it will be al-jumlatul fi'liyya. To begin, therefore, al-jumlatul ismiyya, it comprises of two parts. The first part is called al-mubtada'u, and the second part is called al-khabaru. Need to tidy this up. Right. So, al-jumlatul ismiyya comprises of two parts, al-mubtadu and al-khabaru. Both of these parts of the sentence will be in the raf'un state, and that's important to note. They will be in the raf'un state. So if we want to say, for example, the book is beneficial, then we would say al-kitabu mufidun. Al-kitabu mufidun, meaning the book is, of course there is no is in Arabic, but it's implied, is mufidun, beneficial. As I said, both of them are in the raf'un state, and that's apparent, that's clear from the formation of the word. It's pronounced that way. Both of them raf'un state. The indicate is, in this instance, ad-dammatu, in this instance is ad-dammatu too, but it's tanwinu dammi. Now, al-jumlatul ismiyya comprises of two parts, al-mubtadu and al-khabar. Al-mubtadu, I should have mentioned, is like the beginning or the introduction. Al-khabar is the information. What some people, learners, become confused with when speaking about al-jumlatul ismiyya is that they want to, when we add a word describing al-kitab, they want to make that al-khabar. For example, if we want to say the large book is beneficial, al-kitabu al-kabiru mufidun. The large book is beneficial. People often assume that here, where we have al-kitabu, well, we know that's al-mubtadu, but they think that al-kabiru is al-khabaru. In fact, al-kabiru is just a sifatun. It's an attribute of al-kitabu. It's an attribute of al-kitabu. Mufidun is still al-khabru, and that's important to note. That al-kitabu al-kabiru, al-kitabu is al-mubtada'u, al-kabiru is a sifa of al-kitabu, and mufidun is al-khabaru. These two have to match with regards to gender, number, whether it's male or female, whether it's definite or indefinite. But with al-mubtada'u, it's always definite. I say always definite, there are exceptions, but in the vast majority of instances it will be definite. That, in brief, is al-jumlatul ismiyya, and it's the simplest of the two sentences. The second one, al-jumlatul fi'liyya, that comprises of three parts. The first part is, as its name suggests, al-fi'liyya is the verb, whereas al-jumlatul ismiyya begins with a noun. Al-jumlatul fi'liyya begins with a verb such as kataba. Kataba, he wrote. Now the easiest way to understand al-jumlatul fi'liyya, as I always say, is to ask yourself two questions after you understand the meaning of the verb. The verb is kataba, he wrote. The next logical question is, well, who wrote? We'll say al-waladu, the boy. Waladu, kataba al-waladu. That's the first question. Well, who wrote it? The answer is al-waladu. What did he write? That would be the second logical question, and would say a letter. Risalatan. Risalatan. Kataba al-waladu risalatan. That is the fi'lun, which we know, the verb. Fi'lun. This is the fa'ilun. Fa'ilun, which is the doer, and that is what we call in Arabic maf'ulun. Maf'ulun bihi, the object. So we have the fi'lun, the verb, the fa'ilun, the doer, and the maf'ulun bihi, the object, the thing that was affected by the action. So kataba al-waladu risalatan means the boy wrote a book. Now, very important with regards to al-jumlatul fi'liyya is to understand certain rules. The first of them is that the fa'ilun is always marfu'un. The fa'ilun is always marfu'un with a dammah or tanweenu dammin, depending if alif lam is there or not. If the fa'ilun is always marfu'un, then the maf'ulun bihi is always mansubun. And that word is always going to be mansubun. The indicator being a fatha in this instance, well, in every instance, so long as it's visible and expressed. That's important, that the fa'ilun is always in the state of being raf'un, the maf'ulun bihi is always in the state of being mansubun. The fi'lun, of course, if it's speaking about a third person, such as al-waladu, then that's going to be in the third person, kataba. If that was female, and we wanted to say the girl wrote a letter, then we can't say katabat. We can't say kataba because kataba means he wrote. We have to use the female conjugation katabat, and then we have to use the female, a female word such as al-bintu, and then risalatan. So note that al-bintu is still marfu'un, risalatan is still mansubun, and the fi'lun is now she wrote. And of course the fa'ilun has to match the fi'lun in gender. That, in summary, is al-jumlatul fi'liyya. I'm sure we've exceeded 60 minutes, but as you can appreciate, it's actually quite difficult to explain a substantial amount within that time. But I wanted to mention this as a summary, as an introduction, again returning back to the lessons bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and I'm sure that inshallah ta'ala some of you will find this beneficial as a reminder, and those of you who have not encountered it before, then it's a simple introduction. The other videos and lessons which are available explain all these details in much greater, with a greater explanation. And we shall conclude on that point. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.